The US is deploying an additional 1,000 troops to the country after the Taliban took control of the capital. The president having fled the country, effectively the city now, or has been, defenceless. Well, joining me live is Heston Russell, a retired Special Forces Major and Managing Director of Veteran Support Force. Thanks for your time. It's a bleak day. What are your reflections and thoughts as you saw this happening and confirmed overnight?
Hey, g'day, Tom. Yeah, it's been a pretty big morning to wake up to. Just a very quick background. My first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2011 when I took Prime Minister Julia Gillard to the presidential palace that I woke up this morning watching being filled with Taliban fighters. I deployed again in 2012 with the Australian Special Operations, 2015 with the US, and I'm disgusted, I'm disappointed, I'm angry, and I'm ashamed at the way we've left Afghanistan. The Prime Minister can stand up and say all he wants about fighting for freedom. We've literally left a better equipped and well-armed Taliban. We've put the Afghan people back into the oppression that we were there to liberate them from. I have a sister, I have a mother. I've had calls on the weekend from people who are in Afghanistan, from some interpreters who have gotten out of Afghanistan, going from house to house and punishing those women who aren't wearing traditional dress, through to all of the veterans that are just right now looking at these TV screens and having the same realisation that I have, even though I've been trying to be so positive about this, that it was not worth it. And the best actions of all of our amazing heroes in the Australian Defence Force, our men and women, also those within the foreign affairs and other government agencies that helped us on the ground. It doesn't matter how good we do on the ground if those who are leading us are left to this, to what is truly the biggest embarrassment I've ever lived through on an international phase, to a way that makes me just so ashamed for the position we're in, where we have Australian Defence Force personnel too busy deployed to keeping Australians in their home in Western Sydney, as opposed to being out there on the ground and planning, as we do professionally, as a professional military force, to make sure things like this don't happen. But it comes down to those who make decisions, and they've made the wrong decisions. And no matter how many press conferences you want to stand up and talk about the valiant and gallant and heroes of the Australian Defence Force, they are and they were, but we have led them astray, and we are so much better than this, and the Australian people deserve a legacy better than this.
We had, of course, the decision by Joe Biden, the US president, to announce this withdrawal, and one that you put a timeline on out to September. You say you're also angry at the Prime Minister. What do you think Australia's response could or should have been to that announcement? Because of what we did, of course, was announce we'd withdraw as well.
So, Tom, this is the thing. We withdrew the last of our combat forces at the end of 2013. I know it's only recently been in the media, but some of these interpreters and locally employed civilians that we're talking about have had visa applications in for 7 or 8 years. This isn't just this government, this is successive governments, but this government right here and right now is the one who decided to withdraw the last of our troops and allow what is going on right now to occur. There are so other ways and means we could be supporting. I was there a part of the commando force element that initially deployed to combat ISIS in Iraq, and then I deployed myself there in 2016 and 17 as we planned for the exit out of that country and the handover of that country to Iraq. What we're seeing right now is political box ticking, is obediences to an allegiance that is going nowhere and fast in the Afghan nation, and those who are left to bear the brunt of it are those on the ground, the Afghan people, and those who were on the ground, the Australian personnel who served over there. And again, no amount of grandstanding can put aside what was needed to be done, and that's political planning, a whole of government approach, a deliberate drawdown, support and ongoing support to the Afghan government to maintain their position, as opposed to what is a complete capitulation. And not only is it a capitulation of the current Afghan soil, but we're leaving all of this military equipment and hardware in the Middle East with the most porous borders, next to Europe, next to all these places where Australians want to travel once we get out of this crazy lockdown business. And all of a sudden, we've unleashed a new threat upon the rest of the world because we have failed in the final actions of nearly a 20-year campaign.
What's your explanation for why that's happened so quickly? Because you mentioned, of course, state-of-the-art material, and part of the mission for all countries was helping to train the Afghan army, and how this has unravelled so quickly.
For sure. I mean, it comes down to how we withdrew as well. You know the reports yourself, and I've heard them from there on the ground, where in one of the major bases, the Afghan generals who turned up the next day didn't even know that the US troops had left until they rocked up the next day. what sort of message does that send to those that indeed we invested billions of Australian taxpayer dollars and lives in supporting and investing in, if you're going to uproot and leave the next day? We need to actually support a transition and a progression of power and helping those have more confidence in their actions and abilities without us. But it's just too little, too late.
Heston, it's an awful situation. We do want to keep focusing on it this week. I've got to leave it there because Daniel Andrews has stood up, but we'll talk to you again this week on Sky News about this because we do want to make sure it gets proper coverage. So I appreciate your time today. But live to Daniel Andrews.
Just ask any veterans or family members that need support, please make sure they do reach out and connect with each other, mate, because there is a lot going on and there's a lot of people even more frustrated than me who need to talk to each other about this.